Good morning, students. I am getting started almost on time. I had that up there on time. Believe it or not, I did. And I am waiting for my coffee to get heated up. So I'm going to hear that buzzer go off in just a minute. And then I'm going to grab my coffee and we're going to go ahead and get started. What did we do the other day, last Thursday? What were we thinking of? We didn't finish our mindfulness before we went. I was so excited to get into the twin studies. I was so excited that that I did get into the twin studies. Hopefully you watched that video that I had for you on last Thursday on the twin studies that they were doing, and then I want to show you another video. I think I'm going to give it to you right now while I go and get my coffee. This isn't about twin studies, but it definitely demonstrates some of the real unethical, psychological, unethical research that psychologists have been doing that is just really taken psychology on such a bad avenue that sometimes if I weren't, really promoting a great change in our research, then I would be very worried that I'm associated at all with the psychological community. You have been, an embarrassment for a very long time, and it's because it's run by men. That's the reason why. If you look at the women, they try and badmouth the women, but we certainly have been interested in things that are most important as far as bettering the world. And, people like Mustafa Sharif is all about conditioning people to be soldiers in their quest for more money and fame. It just is the way it is. So let's continue looking at the twin study. But before we look at the twin study, what I forgot to do was I forgot to finish our mindfulness. So we have to finish our mindfulness. I have to get my coffee. And I want to show you, in the meantime, another video for thought. So just give me a sec. I also have to plug in too. So that's going to be another issue for me. Okay, so all right. We've talked in our philosophical classroom, and I believe in this classroom as well, about unethical research that has been done in psychology, including the Tuskegee experiment. I'm not going to be I'm going to be showing you something a little bit different. This actually, these studies have actually been done, and this is what they said was the motivation for the Unabomber, and I have no reason to not believe that. Okay, so let's see here.
Bring your ass up to the stage. I'm gonna knock a head off, I swear to God. Unattractive people are very needy. Excuse me.
In the 1950s and 60s, the CIA conducted a sinister secret program to master the science of mind control. While the secret studies might sound like the stuff of horror science fiction, sometimes the truth is even stranger. Beginning in 1945, American and British organizations teamed up to gather as much military, scientific, and technological research as possible throughout occupied Germany. As German research facilities were seized, Allied force groups began to confiscate war-related documents and materials and interrogate scientists. One particular document was the Ausenberg List, a catalog of scientists and engineers working at the service of the Third Reich. Run by the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency, or JIOA, the covert operation dubbed Operation Overcast, then renamed Operation Paperclip, involved having 1,600 German scientists and their families brought to the U.S. during the Cold War to work on America's behalf. The objective was to use German intelligence to develop America's arsenal of biological and chemical weapons, ensuring that they didn't fall in the hands of the Soviet Union. While President Harry Truman sanctioned the operation, he forbade recruiting any Nazis or Nazi supporters. In spite of this, the JIOA bypassed this directive by hiding any incriminating evidence of possible war crimes from some of the scientists' records. Concerned that the Russians had developed mind control programs, the CIA wanted to find out how U.S. spies would hold up if it was used against them. With this in mind, Operation Bluebird, later called MKUltra, was created by Dr. Sidney Gottlieb. Despite going against the Nuremberg Code, which prohibits experimentation on human subjects without their consent, MKUltra was conducted in secrecy for over a decade and experimented with, quote, the use of biological and chemical materials in altering human behavior. This amounted to many experiments being carried out on an estimated thousands of U.S. subjects, many of whom did not know exactly what they were signing up for. Some of the subjects included sex workers, prisoners, and people with terminal illness, and many of the experiments involved the administration of illegal drugs. According to journalist Stephen Kinzer, who wrote the book Poisoner-in-Chief about Gottlieb, Gottlieb wanted to create a way to seize control of people's minds, and he realized that it was a two-part process. First, you had to blast away the existing mind. Second, you had to find a way to insert a new mind into that resulting void. And what did Dr. Sidney Gottlieb believe was the best way to blast away the existing mind? A newly created drug called LSD. After its discovery in 1943, psychiatrists researched the drug for possible use for depressed, psychotic, and epileptic therapies. In the early 1950s, Gottlieb arranged for the CIA to buy the world's entire supply of LSD. Once he had collected all of the LSD on U.S. soil, he began distributing it under the guise of bogus foundations, sending it to hospitals, clinics, prisons, and other credible institutions to begin administering it in a series of research projects. Experts say that while Gottlieb technically reported to Richard Helms and CIA director at the time Alan Dulles, in essence, he operated almost completely without supervision, and partly because his bosses didn't want to know the details. This resulted in Gottlieb never having to file serious reports when experiments ended in tragedy, and the experiments often did. In 1963, CIA Inspector General John Vance learned of the program. His office reported, quote, "The concepts involved in manipulating human behavior are found by many people, both within and outside the agency, to be distasteful and unethical." As a result of this report, Project MKUltra's operations were slowly scaled back. Eventually, Gottlieb decided that LSD was not useful and that mind control was not possible. The program ended, and in 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered that all documentation from Project MKUltra be destroyed. But while most of the records were destroyed, information on the project remained in some 8,000 pages of financial documents that were accidentally left over. These, along with witness testimonies, would piece together the sordid history of MKUltra. A 1985 Supreme Court document identified MKUltra as 162 separate projects under one umbrella, many of which were conducted at universities and research foundations that did not even know they were taking part in a CIA experiment. Taking place all over the country, the experiments used LSD, barbiturates, hypnosis, and biological agents, and resulted in some unspeakable horrors. In one instance, a mental patient in Kentucky was continuously fed LSD for 174 days. And while nearly every part of the MKUltra experiment is easily viewed as horrifying, nothing is so stomach-turning and alarming as the death of Frank Olson. On November 28, 1953, government scientist Frank Olson jumped from, or was pushed, from a high-level window at the Hotel Statler in New York City. The fall killed him, and the CIA claimed he jumped from the window, committing suicide due to work-related stress. In his life, Olson was recruited to work for the Army's biological lab in 1950 to develop aerosol weapons that could be transmitted through air particles. During visits to warfare research centers in UK, Paris, Norway, and West Germany, it is said that he witnessed extreme interrogations in which the CIA committed murder using biological weapons that Dr. Olson had developed. On November 24th, he told his division chief that he was resigning. His chief then suggested he head to New York for psychological treatment. The day after Thanksgiving, Olson called home saying he was feeling better. Olson would die later that evening. While his family accepted the explanation from the CIA that his death was the result of a stress-induced suicide, they changed their mind when in 1975 details of Project MKUltra were made public. An investigation by the family would show that the window of the hotel was too small for Olson to have jumped out himself.
How to escape the heat if you don't have an air conditioner. This only takes 5 minutes. Tired of hot?
Later in the 70s, the CIA admitted that Olson had been drugged, and President Gerald Ford apologized to the family, but the cause of the death remained a mystery. In 1974, Seymour Hersh exposed the MKUltra program when he wrote about it for the New York Times. In 1977, a Senate committee conducted hearings about the project. They noted that there were effectively very few medical pre-screening procedures in place for subjects targeted in the program. Moreover, the report states, at least one death, that of Dr. Olson, resulted from these activities. The agency itself acknowledged that these tests made little scientific sense. The agents doing the monitoring were not qualified scientific observers. The test subjects were seldom accessible beyond the first hours of the test. In a number of instances, the test subject became ill for hours or days, and effective follow-up was impossible. The committee decided that the victims of MKUltra should be notified, but finding them was quite difficult since the CIA had destroyed much of the project's records. While lawsuits were filed and court cases heard demands for restitutions for victims and more information be released, ultimately little was done. According to San Francisco Weekly, only 14 people were actually notified, even though potentially thousands were exposed to MKUltra experiments. In 1994, Frank Olson's son had his father's body exhumed. A new investigation showed that Frank Olson had suffered a blow to the head before falling to his death, but a New York District Attorney investigation showed inconclusive results. The family reached a settlement with the U.S. government. While so little of what actually went on as part of the MKUltra experiment is known today, the experiments have become intertwined with pop culture. Not only have the experiments inspired media such as The Manchurian Candidate, American Ultra, and Stranger Things, many prominent authors and artists like Ken Kesey, Allen Ginsberg, and Robert Hunter, lyricist for the Grateful Dead, were not only inspired by LSD, but originally got it from MKUltra experiments. Interestingly enough, while at this point universally condemned, this secret Cold War government experiment known as MKUltra has resulted in effects that have been seen by a lot more people than will ever know the project existed.
And I have said this is going on now. It's going on. If you watch my mystery series, you can see that this is going on right now. What are the letters here that I have from Oakland University without any reasoning? All kinds of claims, false claims, right? For people who didn't even know that they were taking part in this experiment for Oakland University, but did know that what they were doing was misrepresenting themselves as chiropractors, as doctors, as nurses, Margaret, as dentists, Matthew. And so similar kinds of things going on here to see Dr. Jeffrey Keslarian in Southfield, Michigan. Who is that? I have no idea who that is. And You have given me absolutely no reason whatsoever for having to go see this. Why do I have this not even on official letterhead without the official CCs here at the bottom? The official CCs that I have here, although none of it is on gold and black letterhead from Oakland University. So it's very clear that the same kind of skeptical university ethics are being utilized. Why? Why? Because nobody's ever stopped them. Because nobody's ever stopped them from the 1930s to before the 1930s. I've been looking up 13 unethical, or whatever it was, science experiments that have been done. And some of the atrocities there, some of them they don't go into. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, I see that it says something about being blocked there, and then it says, but then it says your stream is no longer being blocked because of copyright issues. So let's see what's going on here. Which of course just basically amounts to the idea that they just don't want that stuff shown, right? Of course they don't want that stuff shown. Those two videos, the one I showed you on Wednesday and this one that I'm showing you today, are two videos, two reasons why they are suspending me from Oakland University.